As we continue to discern how each of us is called and gifted to missionary discipleship, please enjoy this video featuring one of our parishioners already living missionary discipleship.
It wasn't until I myself was 9 years old that I became baptized, and that's because my mom was a Catholic Christian. And so she had all of us baptized about a year after my dad passed away. And then we began to attend catechism class. At that time, it was called CCD. Made our sacraments all through catechism. When I was in high school, I would say I'd attended Mass irregularly. My faith grew as I became a young adult, more in searching for who I was. And so I was looking for my own identity, but I knew something was missing in my life, and that's when I began to go back to church.
Well, I grew up in a very Catholic family. I grew up right across the street from a church, so I was an altar boy and did a lot of serving. And like a typical family back then, Mom was the one that kind of was in charge of the religion, and Dad was in charge of work. So I went to Catholic high school and kind of gave more of a social justice point of view towards, so that was kind of a change of things. But when I went to college, I admit the first year I went to college, I didn't even go to church. And then my sophomore year, I kind of had an epiphany, and something's happened in my life that it started making me appreciate what God had done for me in my life. And I started needing to take my faith life more serious. And I started going to church almost every day back when I was the last 2 years of high school. Plus, there's some other things that were going on in my life. And then I came back home and kind of started getting involved. A lot of my friends were still in college. So I started teaching religious ed, actually, with Father Schweitzer asked me to teach it. And I had no background, but it kind of interested me. And then they offered classes through the Institute of Religion. And that really kind of opened my whole faith life up. And that's kind of what the big changing point, too, to learn a lot more about my faith and give us some depth to what it was, before.
I was very drawn to Bob's genuine spirituality, and I also really appreciated his generous heart. And so it drew me in to become friends with him first. And so we were friends for quite some time before we began dating.
Same thing, and I definitely wanted somebody I could share my faith with when I got married. So that was an important part. I knew Emily had a faith, and we could work together on that, raising a family or whatever. So.
As a youngster, I always had a desire to be a teacher. So I knew very early on in my life that I was called by God to be a teacher. I enjoy being with kids. I enjoyed the atmosphere of being able to help kids. And I felt that I was being called into the Catholic schools because of my own faith journey. And so in my life, I've always just tried to model who I am as a Catholic Christian so that others can see what it's like to be around someone who has a faith and models it and strives to model it.
Yeah, I got kind of involved. I like being involved with the formation part of it is because first of all, I like sharing my faith with other people, just to share my faith and hear other people's faith, I guess. And that's why I was drawn to things like small groups and Christ Renews His Parish and some of the other activities. And then I was a sponsor for somebody in the RCIA program. And then I really liked the program, so I stayed on as a catechist in the RCA, and now it's OCIA program. And when I meet new people through like the RCA, and then I can usually meet people where they're at. Because of this, some of the background with like the Institute of Religion and other things that I've read, I feel like I've got somewhat of a background. I'm not a theologian by a long shot, but I've got somewhat of a background, so I can answer some questions and direct people to maybe find an answer that even if I don't know the answer.
And I just enjoy sharing my faith with other people. I think that people who are on the journey of OCIA are searching themselves for something that's missing in their life. And so I can appreciate the fact that I had a similar starting point, and so I'm able to share my own faith with them.
When I first started teaching, I taught the 7th and 8th grades, and I struggled with it because I thought I was trying to teach them something. And now I'm trying to teach them someone, maybe more. About missionary discipleship, I thought Bishop McClory nailed it with this 10-point thing. That, it's not our mission. It's God's work. We're just there to kind of help facilitate. But we have to do this with joy, and I think that's a big part of it too. We have to bring people in knowing that we are joyous.
I think we have to be present to people in the place in which they are in their own lives, so that we can help them to understand that everybody has a life, that it might be different, but if it's centered on Christ, that it can be a joy-filled life. I think you can find joy in sharing Christ by being present to the people around you in the moment.
We're on a journey, and I could say things that I thought were really important 20 years ago have my priorities have changed. But the focus is that we have a God that loves us and is going to be with us even in the hard times. That God loves you and He wants what's best for you more than even what you know what's best for you. To live what we believe, and not that I always do a good job of that or whatever, but we have to live what we believe. And I think people will see that and say, I want what they've got. The greatest thing about being a Christian is that you can look back and say, I really messed up a lot, but I'm going to try to do my best in the future. I can remedy what I did bad in the past, but after that, you just have to let it go and look towards the future.